All right, everyone. It's Sunday, September 25th. You know what time it is. It's the Civic Second with Marwan Cameron and Jeff Campbell. I hope that you had a good Saturday, nice Friday. But it's Sunday morning, and you know what we do on Sunday mornings. We get into it. What is that? Civil discourse, political discourse, civics, all kinds of good things. What's going on locally? That's what we're going to get into today. I do want to send a shout out to Akuye. She is speaking at the Presbyterian Church this morning. If I wasn't doing this show, I would be there to support her. So our prayers and well wishes go out to her, although, she is a natural. All right, let me go ahead and bring on our illustrious analyst extraordinaire, Jeff Campbell. How are you doing today?
Good morning. Good morning.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Eyes on the
right.
prize. It's feeling like that.
Well, good morning, everyone that's coming in. We got Elizabeth that's here. Good morning. We got Rob that's here. Excellent. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Campbell, I'm going to just defer to you a little bit. We don't get a chance to talk during the week because we're so busy. There's so many things going on. So, what's good with you? What's going on? How you feeling? Check in with us.
I'm doing good. I've been I've been buried in this stuff. This is my hobby. So is doing this kind of stuff, putting together these synopses and really political activism and just so to me that's a good time. And so that's what I've been doing all week. And what else is good? Weather's been amazing. I've had the windows open, breezes going. Love that. Yeah. How about you?
Well, I'll tell you, I am doing fantastic. As I always say, I'm blessed and highly favored. Yesterday we had our last G2 barbecue of the season over there at Blueberry Park, which was fantastic. I had never actually been to that park. So they've got a community garden there, which I think should be duplicated. So want to talk with folks and do some research
Yeah.
on that and see what that's about. And then I
I
had to
just
leave.
missed the cutoff. I just missed the cutoff for one of their spots this year. So
Oh,
next year I'm
really?
hoping to get a spot up there. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about it really quick? Like, how does it work if you were trying to get in there?
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's a minimal amount of money, $30 or so. I don't know, so much a year, and
Really?
you get a spot, and they have the water and they have the tools there, I guess, and uh, you can just. And for me, like I live in an apartment, so it's great. So I can go over there and plant a little garden. So it's a garden plot, and they have raised beds, which is new to me here. Other parts of the country they've had. I haven't seen the raised beds, and I guess that's because we have so much rock or something. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. So
That makes sense to me. Well, thank you for sharing that because I did not know that you could have a spot if you
huh.
weren't in the actual neighborhood. So, I never would have considered like, oh, well, that's not in my neighborhood. So
Oh
that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Anybody in Bremerton, I think is the
Anyone in Bremerton.
yeah. My
Okay, I
understanding.
love
Yeah.
that. So anyway, we had our barbecue there yesterday, and then I had to leave and get ready because every fourth Saturday it's all about us. So we have a game night, and so that was, man, that was phenomenal. There was crawfish and shrimp.
Ah,
There was pork ribs, fried catfish, mac and cheese. This was like Thanksgiving and Christmas all rolled into one.
man.
A 200-year-old pound cake recipe, banana pudding. They really put their
Wait, a
foot in it. Banana
200 year
slice.
old 200-year-old
Yes.
pound cake. Oh
Yeah,
wow,
recipe. Yeah.
wow.
It's
That's the real
something
stuff.
else.
Whatever.
So shout out to Deborah
Yeah.
and the boss and Sabrina and Kendra and all the folks that made that possible. Yeah, folks were bringing food and dominoes and spades. A lot of fun every fourth Saturday. And then today after the show, Sean is coming over and we are going to cook a meal with food not bombs. And um, let me let you know, there's a lot of food that was left over from yesterday. So they're going to
Oh,
get a treat today.
oh, I'll be
They are
down
going
there.
to get a treat. Yeah, come on down. They are going to get a treat. There is a lot of food left. Homemade potato salad, mac and cheese, collard greens. Yeah, they would. Yeah, they're going
That's
to get a treat today.
at 6 o'clock, right? Is it
4.
4? 4. Okay,
Yep.
4.
4.
Good.
So Sean's going to come to my house at 2. We're going to heat everything up and then transport it down there. So should
Great.
be a lot of fun today.
Excellent.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into it here. I've got an
There's a
agenda.
lot.
There's
There's
a
a
lot.
lot.
That sounds like a threat. There's a
Yeah,
lot.
no, yeah, there's a lot to go through. Yeah.
So
All good
here's our
stuff.
our
Sorry.
agenda here. Jeff's going to give us a quick summary of the consent agenda and the lawsuit settlement. And actually, Jeff, we got some feedback. I was talking to a viewer, and they were saying for the videos that you put up, they asked if you would, clarify like what was the outcome. And I think that's what you're doing on this. So I started laughing when I looked at it yesterday because you're like answering the question now. And
Uh,
so when you post them up, that was the feedback. So they're like, okay, so well, what happened? It's like it ended, they met, and then it came back, but there wasn't any resolution. So
and I have been skipping the vote. I just started adding the vote part now because I thought I wonder if people are missing the actual vote part. So yeah, I've started putting in the okay. Yes, so hopefully, yeah, look for more of the final conclusions of of these things.
So Jeff's going to
Cool.
give us a summary of that, and then we're going to get into some public comment, democracy in practice. Ooh, I like that. Zoning follow up. Really big discussion last week,
Yeah.
but we're going to get into that today. That was a really big discussion, and then housing in the upcoming budget. So that is our agenda for today. And so go ahead there. We're ready for you.
All right. And just to be quick, the consent agenda, 3 new gun laws were passed,
Really?
restricting where you can carry your guns. Um, I think one was at political events, and one was you carrying it to stop somebody from getting medical care. Anyways, there were 3 of them. Seemed perfectly reasonable. There were no objections from anybody, and so that went through, no questions. And what else? And then there was another thing on. I think there was a. Yeah, I think that was the only. Well, no, there was some funding things that they passed, some funding things, and then there was a lawsuit settlement at the end that I
Mhm.
wasn't able to find out what that was about. But it was $150,000 settlement for some person that,
Wow.
for some reason, and as you know, I'm kind of watching this in the background because I'm like, what are these behind the? Well, I feel like the settlements should be public. I don't know.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there's reasons for against that, but I just feel like we should, if we're getting a bunch of lawsuits for the same reason, that's something that hopefully comes out somewhere. But
Yeah, but
so
isn't that how that works? Like big business and other, and different government municipalities, they'll say, oh, okay, we're going to settle with you, but we're not going to talk about it. So sign here, and
right,
here's your money now. Be quiet. It's like, I can't talk about it.
right.
Is that what you think is happening?
Well, I know that's what's happening, and for if it's between 2 private parties, I think that's one thing. But it's when it's your government. I just feel like that's a little different area there, and that there should be a little more leaning towards transparency.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree with that.
but anyways, I would love to talk to a lawyer or the city attorney about that sometime, because I would love to hear the arguments for why it's important to keep those quiet. um, okay. So moving on, public comment. I want to start with public comment from the city council meeting. I tried to edit it down. It's still a little long because people are making comments, which is great. Um,
I know, it's awesome, right?
yeah, yeah. So if I think we can go ahead and just play that through. The last one is you. So if you don't want to listen to yourself again, it's up to you. If you want to just summarize yourself, you can do whatever you would like
Well,
there.
I don't even remember what I said.
Yeah.
We'll play it for folks.
Okay.
All right, so here's the first one.
And this is from the public comment from the
Hello,
last city council meeting.
I'm not even going to comment on the previous comments, but I would like to comment on the reasons I've been given via email from the council's legislative aid, saying that you're not having public meetings in person because the public Kitsap Public Health has advised you not to. Well, I called Kitsap Public Health and talked to the board administrator, and after he was done laughing, he said that absolutely not do they do that. In fact, they required Kitsap Public Health staff to start meeting with the public in September. And as you can see, these virtual meetings are not working when even the city clerk can't stay signed on. A lot of the conversations are limited and broken up, and we need to get back to at least a hybrid type meeting and have more staff available in regular office hours when the public needs to go in and get permits and other things. It's not, even the president said the pandemic is over. For God's sakes, let's get back to regular in-person meetings. If somebody has a health issue, then of course they can chime in via Zoom or whichever way that other places have already figured out. It shouldn't be that difficult for Bremerton. That's issue number one. Number two, over a year ago, me and some of my friends in the community came up with some very low-cost solutions for some public restrooms to be used primarily by unhoused neighbors. And you guys just keep kicking the can down the road, coming up with different excuses, or we're going to give this to another private nonprofit to solve. Meanwhile, we still don't have public restrooms. So I urge you.
I just wanted to pause really quick. Was this Jane who was giving her public comment?
Yes,
Okay.
Jane Robolowski.
Do you know Jane?
I do. She's
Okay.
Yeah, she's an amazing woman.
Yeah.
I like
Shout
her.
out to Jane. I'd
Yeah.
like to get the information on the research that she's already done, so we can, bring that next month to the big meeting. I think that's going to be fantastic.
She would be great to reach out to, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, let's continue.
You just look into your humanity and get some public toilets out there and public garbage cans that people can use on a daily basis. Thank you.
One of the things that is a little concerning for me when you're giving your public comment, and I hope that they continue to do a hybrid, but right now they're on camera, right? And it's important. You're having a conversation with these folks, or you're giving not really a conversation, it's one way, but you're giving your public comment, and you want to see the faces of the people that you're speaking to. Well, in a little bit, they're going to turn the cameras off. And I was really offended by that. I don't think they should do that. What were your thoughts on that, Joe?
Actually, I didn't notice that. It's an interesting point. No, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
All right, let's get back into there.
Thank you, Kay. Alone.
I would like to ask that in the future, maybe the funding for Kitsap Transit can make it for a longer bus schedule past 8 p.m. I found it
absolutely
that some of the transit services, like the 307 in Kingston, is no longer available from Kingston to Bremerton. And yes, I commend some of the past speakers, like Jane Leba. I don't want to butcher her name, but Jane, for speaking up about some of the things she spoke of. And I'd like to thank Councilwoman Anna Mockler, who represents Kitsap Transit. Thank you for what you do, and the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Yeah, we think about equity and we think about housing. It isn't going to be just enough to provide housing, right? how are people going to be able to maintain that housing? Having a transportation company, one of the challenges that folks have is, hey, I work at a restaurant, and by the time my shift is over, there's no public transportation. So I either have to pay for a cab or an Uber or a G2 transportation, or I'm waiting on a friend, or maybe I got off, but I've got to wait 2 or 3 hours, to get a ride home, or I got to get dropped off 2 or 3 hours. And when you are low income and your time is so valuable, and so that is, to me, I think time is more important than money, right? Because with time, I can make money. I might need to rest. There's a whole bunch of things that are centered around time. And so we have to address multiple things at the same time. Any
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
yeah. Well, what struck me with these conversations and the zoning conversations and everything is how clearly the public is tying all this together, like transportation and housing and moving away from a car centric and the environment, and all this came like swirling around in all these conversations. And it was just I was just amazed. I was enjoying all the comments and really taking it in, and um feeling good about my community.
You're geeking out, huh? Wednesday
I
was a
was
good
geeking
night
out.
for
Yeah,
you.
there you go.
Next up is Kathy T. Bradley.
Hello. I just wanted to first thank you all for like hosting these meetings. I very much appreciated like the brief summary at the beginning. I personally didn't know that oils and fats were a bad thing to do. So I definitely appreciate that information and look forward to getting that flyer in the mail. And during this session, or during this public recognition part, one thing I just wanted to bring up, like that's important to me as a resident of Bremerton, that has honestly been on my mind, like everywhere that I have lived, is public transit and just the ability to be mobile in my city without the need for a car or without the need for car dependency. I would love to see, like the previous speaker mentioned, buses that run late. I would love to see buses that run on a regular schedule. I would personally love to be able to go downtown Bremerton and shop and just like hang out in the parks and go to the farmers market without feeling like I need a car to do that on a regular basis. And I also have like family in Poulsbo that I would love to be able to visit without needing a car to drive only a 30-minute drive. And yeah, so that's really just all I wanted to say, is that like me as a citizen of Bremerton, like public transportation and less car centric infrastructure and more bike safety is really something that's on my mind. And that's all I have. Thank you.
What I wanted to add with her comment there was thinking about how the ecosystem works, right? So she's talking about accessibility to farmers markets, which is locally grown food, right? I mean, like you said, all of these things go together. It's so important. Did you
Yes,
just agree?
yes. Yes, I agree. Sorry. Like, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. How are you doing this evening? Couple things. The main thing that I want to touch on tonight, and have not had a time to gather my thoughts, but myself and several others were very dismayed at the recent REACT meeting that took place. It was very offensive to watch what happened in that meeting. It appears that the fervor and the dedication of racial justice and equity since the murder of George Floyd has seemed to wane, and people don't have the same zeal to do the work as they once protested that they did. Mayor, I don't know when this person is coming on that you're bringing on, but this person needs to take direction from REACT and look at things through a racial equity lens. And I'm asking asking you to not allow them to move the goalpost and move it from racial equity to everything else. That is often what is done in this country from the civil rights era on down, where they use stats. Even city council provided stats where black people are harmed, looked at different demographics. Right now, currently, black women are experiencing homelessness in the highest rates. And then all of a sudden, the resources and the conversation switches to every other demographic. So looking at things, especially our budget through a racial equity lens, is paramount, is critical, especially in this county and in this city. So I ask that you folks find and tap back into how you were feeling and how you wanted to move after the murder of George Floyd. The other thing that I would add is as I run it. So let me pause there and just give me your feedback on that, Jeff, since that's my statement.
Yeah, I think yeah, that was a pretty powerful statement, and we were talking about having another show to really dive into this. Are we still gonna do that? I hope some point.
Oh, absolutely.
Good. And yeah, no, thank you for speaking up on that.
Well, what I'll ask you to do, just give a little context, if you would, in regards to what the mayor's plan is and what city council's plan is and react. Can you explain those three things and why I would make that statement?
Well, it sounds like you may have a better understanding of what's going on than I have, but it sounds like because I'm not clear on what's going on with React. I know they're trying to figure out what their purpose is and what their definition is, and I know that there is a diversity, equity, and inclusion person come that the mayor's hiring, and that he thinks that'll take over the role that was it's all cloudy to me, actually.
I mean, and it's cloudy to react also. So they have been fighting for a few years, and they had the support, and now it just seems to be mired in bureaucracy, right, and red
Yes.
tape and lawyerism and all these other things. And so, as you were saying, the mayor wants to hire a diversity, equity, and inclusion person, but it's not clear as to how React and this, entity is going to exist. Furthermore, in a few meetings previous for city council, the council wanted to move away from racial equity and just, hey, just equity for all. And, that's why my statement needed to be made, right? Because what I was reflecting on was the fact that, and city council did it themselves. They talked about stats that affected Black Americans and then shifted the goalposts and said, okay, so we need to do this for all people. It's like, well, wait a minute, don't use stats in that way. And so it's just horrible. One thing I can remark, I was exhausted, man. I sounded horrible there. It's like, am I gonna fall asleep in the middle of talking? I was super tired.
Oh, also, I want to point out that so on the conduit, if people want to go back, they can see the original meetings, or at least a couple of them, of when React was formed, and all those conversations that took place back then, all the way up till now. And um, it's a journey that seems to have gotten boggled down in bureaucracy. You're right.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'll say too, to give it some context, was the reason why I was offended was the facilitator of the meeting was Councilwoman Mockler, and she is I guess the best word would be a stickler for protocol, right? So you speak when it's your turn to speak, and then the next person is given permission to speak, and then they speak. Well, they had the county attorney there, which they don't have a lot of access to, and they didn't meet last month, and so when you're only meeting once a month, it's already hard to get something done. To miss a month means that you haven't met in 60 days, and you may not have gotten a response from the county, from the lawyers, and this and that. And so a dialogue needs to take place. And on the one hand, she's saying, "Hey, the attorney's here and it's late, and he needs to get some supper." And it's like, well, we're all hungry, right? But then you're trying to have a discussion, and then she's shutting down Daryl Riley, who got pissed off and he left, right? And I've watched this interaction between the two of them on more than one occasion. And it appears that she is more interested in protocol than actually addressing the issues, right? And this wasn't a thing where he was just like talking over and it was just out of control. But it was an opportunity for dialogue, and she just kept shutting it down. And if you watch and you pay attention, you can look at, I don't know if I'll call them microaggressions, but you'll look at things where she's very polite to the other council folks and just really curt when it comes to Daryl. So I was offended by that, and I don't think that she should facilitate the meetings, right? Or if you're going to agitate folks. And this is not just my thoughts, but if you watch that, I wish we had time today to show it. But as Jeff said, it is on there. The many on the council called it out later on in that meeting, and they were offended, right? And so yeah, I'll just leave it there. Any final thoughts on that before I move on? Because I changed total subjects on this.
Yeah, no. Thank you for that. I'm figuring out how to segue to the next section though.
Well,
Sorry, good.
Well, we still have what, like
Yeah.
about 30 seconds left of this one. And
Yeah.
all I was going to add here
Okay.
was you have 3 minutes, right? And so you don't have to come on and talk about one subject. So I talked about React, and then I switched gears. So let's hear the other side of that, and then we'll go on to the next.
I think that was the last one.
It is.
Company is the executive director of G2.
Oh, I see.
Things are very important. We have several folks that are trying to pay their rent in a city that has no affordable housing. As such, bus service that ends at 8:30 at night, but they're working at restaurants and other locations, trying to make ends meet, have no way to get home, or they have to pay pretty high rates in order to do so. Same thing with no bus service on Sunday. So I ask you to look into those things and see what you can do about that. Joe Walter from G2 Housing talked about our event in October, and we hope to see you all there. Thank you for your time.
All right, so that was it.
And we will hear Joe Walters. Actually, I cut out Joe Walters' comment from this section because I put her in a later section because I thought, anyways, hopefully you'll see why that fits. And yeah, great comments from people. Loving the participation by people and smart people in the community, and transportation. I'm so glad to see that come up because that's been one of my pet peeves since moving here too. Is coming from different cities where it was easy to take the bus. I don't like having a car. I would prefer not having a car. So having I would love to see a better public transportation here.
And again, I'll just state again, you don't have to talk about one thing. You have 3 minutes. And when I finished my statement, I'm listening to the previous people. I didn't come on to talk about transportation, but transportation is what I do here in this county. So it's like, all right, hearing that, it's like, okay, let me bolster their voices and be another voice there. So, if you hear something, it's like, yeah, you know what? That's important to me too. So take advantage of that.
Yes, I agree. Yep.
So, no, even in my exhaustion, I'm ad-libbing. Are you ready for me to play the next one here?
Okay, well, just to lead in so the next one, now we're moving into democracy in practice and the need for an auditor. And so this first clip is Anna Mockler. This is where her penchant for protocol pays off for us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so anyways, you can go ahead and play that to set that up. And that, well, let me just say that then I'll come in and talk about the auditor that is then proposed.
All right, just tell me if you want me to pause.
Okay.
Good evening. This is another in the ongoing series examining the nature of democracy and its application. At our last meeting, the council president told us that we can speak only to the 2 council staffers and to the city attorney. Other interaction with city staff should go through the mayor's office. This vision of our role is very different from that described in Bremerton City Charter. The charter was approved by voters and can only be changed by voters. Article 3, Section 12 of the charter states that council's remit is to, quote, have all legislative powers possible, and council may adopt and enforce ordinances relating to the good of the government of the city. In my opinion, our job is also to represent the people, to treat their dignity with respect, and to do the work they asked of us in the city charter. We're the legislative branch of Bremerton city government, just as the mayor is the head of the executive branch. Our city charter gives us pretty broad powers, as you'll see in the excerpts I'll post in the chat. The mayor, head of the executive branch, has different duties and responsibilities. The mayor's role is executive and administrative. The mayor has general supervision of the city's administration, as detailed in the charter. That's a single role with pretty broad powers and a lot of detail work, a lot of it. So with the judiciary branch, our small constitutional system of checks and balances is complete. The founders who wrote the Constitution, having just rejected the tyranny of kings, feared the rise of a strong authoritarian leader, and the three-branch system was designed to safeguard against that rise. So right now, messy, inefficient, argumentative democracy is often set aside in favor of one strong authoritarian leader. It's familiar to us from history. It's familiar to us from most work that we've ever had. From all military experience, there is a boss and sub-bosses and workers. It's a very clear hierarchy, top to bottom. The thing is that Congresses, councils, and committees operate differently. They are voluntary associations. Voluntary associations are a group of peers with one member who presides, thus president, to maintain proper procedure. Both Robert's rules and our own council's rules and procedures make it clear that the presiding member is not the group's leader, not vested with power to speak for council without consultation, but an equal member with this additional difficult duty. So we, this council, are a voluntary association of 7 peers with one member who's elected every new year to preside. Our job is to be true to our oath and true to the honorable task we've been given. The voters of our districts chose us to establish goals, priorities, and policies. The voters of this city chose our role in the charter. In theory, the mechanism of creating workable policies and ordinances for the good of city government is prescribed in Rule 4 of Council Rules and Procedures. In practice, however, the council president determines what council members may put on the agenda. It is how we've always done it. But the actual written documents give any member the right to introduce any subject, matter, or communication onto the agenda for council's consideration. Yay, nay, or we want more information. I propose that we begin using this mechanism to place subjects onto the agenda to establish policy. One of you might want to introduce consideration of a resolution that protects lands along the watershed forest border, or measures to bring better hygiene and general conditions to the houseless downtown, or to have a hearing on the MFTE. Over to you. We established a number of goals during the June retreat. Let's begin the time-consuming work of realizing them. As Thoreau says, you've built castles in the air. Now put the foundations under them. Thank you.
All right.
So that it takes me back to one of our programs where we went through all that. So I totally agree with everything she says because she agrees with us. And the backdrop of this is that the mayor has been very he's been cutting them off. Like the city council members have been putting in requests for information, and those have been they've been pretty much told to stop doing that because they're causing too much time to be spent on the administrative side. But it's a problem if your legislators who are really charged with overseeing the government and oversight, if they can't get the information they need to evaluate programs and to evaluate what's going on, to evaluate the administration, how they're spending their money and executing the will of the people. It's Yeah, it's troublesome. So it is, and it has felt like a very authoritarian government here in Bremerton. And I think historically that goes back to where it was, it was a small group of friends. You had the mayor and you had the city council, and they golfed together. And the mayor proposed it. The city council always agreed with it, and they all met at parades, and it was all but one big happy family. But the problem is you get more diversity coming into it. There are different views, there are different opinions, different goals, and I think, and we're seeing that play out more as our council gets more diverse, and there are more views, and as the community pays more attention to what's going on at the city council, there's a big push um, for really inclusiveness and transparency that the administration it feels to me like they're pushing back on really strongly. And if you're in charge of getting something done, I could see you don't want a lot of people like a lot of cooks in the kitchen or what. I don't even know what the metaphor would be, but again, government, I think the more people that are involved, it's messy, like Anna says, but it's worth it to get all of us involved.
So is that it almost seems maybe it's unintentional. But when you say, we don't have time to give you these resources to advocate for we the people, right? Their constituents, like Anna was saying. Is there money in the budget? Should we demand that, city council has their own attorneys and their own folks to do the research and get that information? Because if we advocate for that, that means that those resources have to come from somewhere. And that's what they always say, right? We could do that, but now we're going to have to take money from, trying to support the unhoused. And they usually pick the things that are important to you. So, how do we navigate those waters, Jeff?
Oh, that's a great segue into the next clip, because Younger, Councilmember Younger has a proposed solution to that, which I hadn't even thought of. So this was something new to me, and it's what's called the legislative auditor. But I'll let him kind of describe what that is, and certainly that sounds like something worth pushing for funding for. Listen to it, and we can discuss after.
I found myself agreeing with Younger twice on Wednesday. So I appreciate someone else mentioned it, but definitely a thoughtful individual. So I did appreciate his perspective. All right, let's jump into this one.
And this actually is probably just so it's still fresh in my mind. It's towards our audit chair, Council Member Coughlin. The statistic we passed in 2018, I was here, the expanding the area for the duplexes, and the statistic that I found out today, we only had one built in 4 years. It was quite shocking to me. I appreciate the administration with their toolkit, and I think too often the council passes ordinances saying, well, this will solve this, this will solve that. It doesn't solve it. And then we move on and find.
You wanted me to pause there?
Yeah, just pause for a second. And so what he's talking about there is that he just got some information that so allowing duplexes to be built, there's certain areas where they have been allowed to be built, and only one has been built in the last, I don't know what he says, 5 years. And so this is what kind of leads into the discussion of, can we get some real measurements of what's going on here with an auditor?
Another solution to add to the toolkit, but maybe we should do a little performance audit on stuff like this and bring it to the council's attention before it becomes before a vote like this and shocks everyone. It shocked me. I'm sorry it did. So I'd be supportive of that. I'd even supportive of increasing the auditor's hours full time. We have enough, not just on the housing spectrum, but every facet the city does, passing an ordinance saying we're going to do this or that. The state legislature has a performance auditor. It's the legislative auditor, and that's what this individual does. He's got a staff of like 30 people, and they look at programs as directed by the legislature. So I would totally endorse. I know our auditor can do that and kind of does that for some things, but I really would like to see that. Let's prove the effectiveness of our ordinances, not to say, oh, well, we are wrong. Hopefully we'll say, yeah, we are right, but just to see how well we're doing and how well they're being implemented. I think that would be great. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I
Right, you want to jump in there at the end? What I was going to say here is checks and balances are good, right? We're trying stuff. Is it working? Should we continue to do more of it? Should we change it? Can we do it better? Like, yeah, I agree with his statement there. All right, looks like Anna Mockler is next. Councilwoman Mockler.
echo Councillor Younger's call for a full-time auditor, as I've done before. And I think that as evaluating how well our ordinances are working is valuable. I'd just add the caveat that Director Andrea Spencer brought up last week, which was that it can take quite a while for an ordinance to show full effect. So sometimes I agree that if an ordinance goes into place in 2018, by 2022, you should see more than 4 examples of it. But I would also just, it takes quite a while. Like an ordinance passes, people learn about the ordinance, people begin to plan about the ordinance, people apply for a permit, people have their, it's just a long process. Just adding that caveat, but increasing the auditor to a full-time position, I'm already on record as approving that. And for doing performance things like this, I would certainly be interested in looking at. I'd like to mention.
Now to our special.
All right, sorry about that, everyone.
So yeah, I'm going to write in and say, yeah, please add an auditor to the budget. So that's one of my letters to the council this week, because I think that's a great idea. If that's what they feel like they need more, I want to support our city council members on getting them all the information they feel they need to make an informed decision.
And I don't know if you cut out Councilwoman Denise Frey's statement on this, but I thought that was great where she talked about, hey, there's different types of audits, and it's great. There's financial audits and performance audits. So I appreciated her input there. I don't know if that's if you captured that or not, but
well, first of all of the complete statements are all available on the Conduit. And I had so many to go through here that I didn't catch Denise's, and I apologize to her for that.
Oh no, it's all good. You're good.
Yeah.
The whole thing's up there, and you're cutting it up. Like, no, it's all good.
Yeah, but definitely go back and listen to the other comments on that. Okay.
So what you got for us next?
Next one is zoning follow-up, and again, amazing discussion from people. I've enjoyed listening so much this week to everybody else's comments. So this next one is and there was a lot of public comment on this. There was like a half an hour or so. I tried to whittle it down to like cut up snippets to get a flavor of the public comment, but you should go back and watch the full public comments if people want to. Or I would urge people to do that. But here's kind of this next clip is just a short clips to kind of give a flavor of what I was hearing.
So Jeff, when you decide to cut up, the videos the way you do, why is this one so important about zoning before we play it?
Well, why is this one so? The public comment. Well, the public comment was important to me. Are you asking why is zoning important?
No. Just why this particular clip is so important to you? Is it?
Well, some of it was like I cut out like some redundancy. Well, mostly I cut out the stuff in between where the people are saying, "Can you hear me? Am I on?" So I try to cut out all that, and then it was subjective, but I tried to get a sample of all the speakers. But going forward, I don't know. As more and more people comment,
it's super important, right?
Yeah.
It's
So
critical.
I don't know. So for this show, I don't know whether I should summarize that or.
No, I think it's perfect. I just wanted for you to articulate why why, this is about public comment, this particular video, right? And it almost doesn't matter what the subject is. It is critical and paramount to do public comment.
Yes.
And this topic is definitely important also. That's where I was trying to lead
Yeah.
you there.
Absolutely. Sorry. Where are we going?
Trying to leading counselor, leading.
Yeah.
With this public notice from the mailer, and I came here today to say yes in my backyard. The proposed zoning changes are a step in the right direction. But I'm wondering, what are the next steps? Can we remove single-family zoning in Bremerton in the spirit of the state of Oregon's HB 2001? Would the city council encourage Kitsap County to adopt a land value tax rather than our current proposed tax structure? And yeah, that's my, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Next up, we have Jeffrey Kelnan.
Thank you for allowing me to talk tonight. I want to actually thank Mr. Jackson for his responses to all my previous emails. He's been extremely professional and clear. My concern is, as a landlord of affordable housing within the downtown area and the R10 area, which I have a vacant lot available for development. It's a 50 by 100 square foot lot, 5,000 square feet, but it appears that a duplex would be not allowed in that area under the new based on density. If they could be more specific about R10 5,000 square foot lot based on density, would a duplex be allowed to be built?
Hi, I have a vacant lot over on Beach Drive. I had talked to Mr. Younger about this several years ago when we wanted to build all this road. It's like an alleyway that just has duplexes on it. And I was told that we were not able to build another duplex. So it's been sitting vacant all these years waiting for something like this to happen. So I am really hoping that this does go through.
Hello, thank you all for hosting this public hearing. Yeah, I got a flyer in the mail asking to join this public hearing, and I really appreciated that flyer. Like, that was very perfect. And also thank you, Garrett Jackson and Kate Millward, for putting on that information session. I came here not really knowing what to expect, but that was a lot of information that was really wonderful. And I really appreciate you all putting together that information to explain the complexities of what's going on. And yes, I just wanted to come here and say I absolutely support all these changes. I was super excited when I read this flyer. As someone, I moved to Bremerton recently, and I'm at 30 and I'm a first-time homeowner finally. And honestly, it just feels lucky. And so I personally would love if others' journeys to own property wasn't as hard as mine and there was more options other than single family homes. And yeah, my only concern that I sort of mentioned earlier in the public recognition part was just my main concern is, again, just like parking requirements. I know that's like a future issue. That's not really the point of this proposal right now, but my hope in the future for Bremerton and honestly all cities is that hopefully a car is not someone's only means of transportation. There's that public transit is a more attractive option, and all these parking spaces that are required for these cottage homes or multifamily homes maybe become less useful or less precious and eventually are no longer required. So thank you all again for all you're doing.
Hi, this is Susan Plon, and I really appreciate the meeting tonight. I'd like to echo the thanks to Mr. Jackson and Ms. Millward for their information. I'm especially excited about the opportunity to develop cottages because I think that they create a really nice neighborhood feel as opposed to, you know, really tall buildings and something with no outdoors.
You know, this is great. There's so many important issues nowadays to address, and I can see that housing and stuff is very important. What I'm not hearing as we're trying to make room is let me just, so I'm a longtime resident. My grandparents moved here in the 40s. And my father was World War II vet, 99, recently passed away. So I was born and raised here. And one thing that Kitsap County has that very few places in the world have is the beauty, the land. This is the evergreen state. My concern is that while we are addressing these issues, we are slowly becoming the used to be green state.
Around Kitsap County, there's one on Waga Way going towards Central Valley where, you know, we've lived for, you know, before the Bremerton house. And it's like 50 houses going up, you know, off the side of the highway, and it's all clear cut. You know, not a single tree remained. And I don't know if it's, you know, affordable housing or not. It, you know, low 400s. I don't know if that's affordable. It doesn't sound like it to me. But, you know, it's an example, and the parking, you know, and I understand incentivizing public transit, but to not take into account the reality of today, if you allow 1.5 houses or cars per resident, but people have 2 or 3, all that does is push all the cars out onto the street.
It's Jessica Ferris. Yeah, so I'm here to just have a public comment to say that I support this initiative. I guess I don't know if these are necessarily questions or concerns, but one of the things that I am interested in knowing more about is, it's already been presented previously, but the increase in public transportation, I do think that that's a concern. I'm a huge advocate for public transportation in general. This is one of the first places that I've really lived that I have required to have a car, because I have lived in previous places that I could take a bus or a subway to. And so I think increasing public transportation opportunities and availability would really be great, especially if there is a conversation around increasing density. The other thing that I have is concern or question I have is if there is increased options for housing, how will Bremerton City possibly keep rents controlled or rent controlled or decrease or limit the increase in rent? I feel like my rent has been increased over the past year by a lot, and that's kind of concerning because I'm, you know, just I would like to continue living here, and I feel in some ways that I'm being pushed out of the housing that I have, the apartment that I live in. So I guess I don't know if it needs to be addressed right now, but something for City Council to consider, that if there is increase in housing, how will they possibly decrease rent or keep it somewhat stabilized so that they don't continue to go through the roof every year? And I guess my other comment is that I actually am, to be kind of bold, is that I kind of oppose all these NIMBY arguments that are currently happening right now, because actually increasing density would preserve the green spaces within Kitsap County. If you are not incorporating and keep developing these single family houses, then actually these green spaces can continue to be preserved. And I feel like this conversation about limiting or not wanting density is other red flags for concerns that aren't actually about housing, but are actually about other things. So I think that it's my only comment that I have, and thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful to watch and kind of engage with the information. I got the mailer. I wanted to be a part of this. I moved to Bremerton in 2019. I was originally living in Boston, Chicago before this. I've seen my rent increase pretty substantially from about $1,300 to close to $2,000 now, just in a couple of years. So I do give my support to this initiative, increasing the amount, the supply of housing in Bremerton, especially with this, with an increased density, I hope will result in decreased rents or more affordable housing being available. I commend you all for putting this together. I don't think, as Jessica had mentioned before, I don't necessarily think that this is going to result in the degradation of the green space of Bremerton. I do think that that's a big pull for the county. I hope that with more dense housing, we will actually reduce the amount of single family units that we're building in and the amount of environmental degradation that we're putting upon the county. One of the things I wanted to talk about is just because we have a larger supply of housing doesn't necessarily mean that the rents will decrease or the cost of housing will decrease as well. So it's one of the things I wanted to flag for the council here is this is a great step and I support it. Once that is done, how are you going to ensure that given this increased supply, we're not just building, luxury units that are going to be unaffordable for the majority of the population here, especially given the fact that Washington is growing pretty quickly, as is Bremerton. So thank you
all for, changing the density and allowing in duplexes, triplexes, cottage housing. That's all fine. But I think we're putting the cart before the horse yet again. We have the worst transit of any place I've ever lived in life. I've lived all over the country, even in rural areas. I had better bus service than we do here. So, for years and years and years, all we've done is support Kids Have Transit to become a ferry service and have everybody in the county pay and very few people using. We have terrible, terrible bus service. So that needs to be one of the major steps that we work on. And I don't care if we take all of our REIT money and just get circulator buses for Bremerton alone and just get back to when we had Bremerton Bus Company. I mean, it's awful service. So you can't just keep giving tax abatements for luxury apartments and then be surprised that there's nothing affordable, because when they charge $1,800 for a studio, every other landlord in town is like, okay, I'm raising my rent. And that is a big part of why rents have gone up dramatically, is by these luxury apartments that we still haven't made any change on, that aren't paying property tax or paying very small tax. So those are some things that should be addressed also. Thank you.
Thanks for hosting this meeting. I live in, I believe, the 6th district with Mr. Goodnow. But yeah, I'm all for progress. I'm all for people being able to rely less on cars in this town and rely more on bikes. It's nice seeing the bike lanes. It'll be even nicer when Naval Avenue goes on its road diet, so we can get a good example here in town of what a good road diet is. Anyway, yeah, I'm all for it. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to hear me out.
Thank you again. I think I'm understanding the proposal. And of course, my biggest concern is around low-income housing. Thank you for adding the Bremerton Housing Authority to the folks who will get the exception along with other charities. And that looks like affordable housing to me, I hope. And I am concerned that we are lightening the requirements for development. And I think I'm echoing what some others have said, and that what we are doing is creating more housing without any confidence that it will mean more low-income housing. If I'm understanding the cottage development idea, it makes me think of something like the Habitat development on, is it Arsenal, where it's a bunch of little houses that are around as central the kids can play, and it feels like community and looks like community. My concern is that we're now just making it easier for developers to produce very expensive tiny homes. I'm not sure how if we have any ways to set limits on how much they're going to sell these houses for. And in the duplex idea, I saw the one where we had a property line going down the center of a house. Certainly, I'm concerned that we're creating more housing without enough consideration for being sure that the people that, like, what is the number? What represents a single family home? Is it $400,000? I understand for renting that we're trying to aim for 30% of your income will pay for your housing costs, and nobody is getting that. But at least that's clear for me as far as rentals go. So I hope you'll keep those concerns in mind and not just make it easier for developers to create money-making opportunities that don't necessarily serve the deepest needs of our community. All right, thanks.
Sustainable growth is good. Green space is good. You cannot have affordable housing without building up. Unaffordable housing creates human misery. Dense housing minimizes urban sprawl and preserves green space. Thank you.
As the world.
All right. So there was a lot of public comment there. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was just great conversation. The whole time I'm sitting back and saying, "Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point."
And anything that stood out to you in particular?
Yeah, a bunch. I could go through my list here. I was writing it down as I went through. The first thing that stood out to me was they make a big deal out of how they did a lot of outreach, which is fantastic, but they only did outreach to property owners.
Huh.
So it went to the property owner's address, which for many of the properties it's out of state. It's not even so. I I applaud them trying to taking a step in the right direction of notifying people, but I think renters have as much to say about zoning as property owners.
Yeah.
And I'm just new to this because having never owned property, I've never paid attention to zoning. So this is all pretty new to me still. So that's the one thing. The other thing I heard a lot or some was what we talked about. Oh, well, first of all, let me step back and say again to focus on what this was about. So this vote was about a zoning change that would allow townhomes to be built pretty much anywhere in the city. They call it the middle housing. They call it. And so it's really trying to get infill of duplexes and things like that. It's a on its face, it's a fairly straightforward, easy vote. I mean, yeah, if it's increasing density, then yeah, pretty much everybody is for increasing density. But it's all these other issues that are not being addressed as much. Like for instance, parking. I was so happy to see that come up, and it's one thing I've heard from a bunch of experts, housing experts, is one of the big barriers to getting housing built in Bremerton is the parking requirement. You have to build an enormous amount of parking if you're going to build property in Bremerton, and why? Um, you know, a lot of us come from, some of us come from areas where we didn't have cars, and isn't that the goal of moving away from cars? And so if you're just continually building more parking places, you're adding to the cost of the housing, and you're doubling down on cars. What do you think of that?
Well, I think
Because the other argument is that let me just that I heard on here to give
Yeah, go ahead.
is that the people are going to have their cars. You're not going to move people out of their cars. So if you take away the parking, all it does is push people to park out in the surrounding neighborhoods.
Yes, and it would push them to the sidewalks, which is an issue. And I live on a street that is monitored, I believe, by Diamond Parking. So you can only park on my block for 4 hours. You can only have 2 vehicles. So if you have a number of adults that live in your home, that can be challenging. And again, for me, I need to be different places. I need to be a lot of places, and I don't have the time to jump on public transportation. Also, there are some health issues with that too. So there's definitely some nuance, and I appreciate both sides and agree with both sides. I think we need to do both, right? We do need to increase public transportation. We do need to increase housing. I can't remember the term they were talking about. It was like cottage housing. KCR owns a property out in Port Orchard where it's a big square, and so all of the houses are in the square, and the center is this common space. So it's the greenery, and I think there's like a little play area for the kids, and you can come out and set up your barbecue, I believe, if you wanted to do that. And that's really nice. And so there is a parking lot still,
but it's on the other side and it's just for them, and they actually share a parking lot with the KCR building that's out there, which is, I think, a great use of how they cut that space up. One of the other things that and we'll listen to the dissent of Younger here coming up next, but the in some of the in the zoning things when they're saying, hey, we can only build structures so large in this piece of acreage. I think they need to modify that, right? We have a crisis, so we're still trying to solve the problem under the same rules that don't fit. And yes, I don't think this goes far enough, which I think we're going to hear. So yeah, I
Well,
think it's both. We need. I'm a super obviously, some people will say, I think it's hyperbole. It's like, hey, you know what? I don't want to be in the business of providing transportation. Like, put me out of business, right? It's filling a void. But yes, we do. I don't want to see people, that can't get to work, and they have to work 2 and 3 part jobs to pay their rent and to survive, and they're constantly falling under. But it is true, right? You know, we have to answer these solutions, and if that means that that's going to take a hit to G2 personally, then so be it. We got to solve these issues.
a few of the other things that stood out for me. You hear talk of the feel and the character. We want to preserve a certain feel. We want to preserve a certain character. We want to preserve green space. And as we've discussed, and also somebody brought up, there's some racism in that. There's all sorts of things baked into that sometimes, and sometimes that preserving the character is that stopping the creation of enough housing for everybody. Parking, rent control came up. What is this going to do for rents? I love it that people are like totally seem to understand now that just creating more housing is not lowering the prices for anyone, and so
Yes, and
that's a
and
narrative
and
that really has changed, which is good.
yeah, Councilwoman Chamberlain will talk about that later.
Yes.
Let's read Elizabeth's comment. She says, good comments that took into real consideration the balance of our green spaces, public transportation, and providing real affordable housing. And I think there can be unique ways to have green spaces, especially with community gardens and things of that nature, without saying, we need all these parks and trees and, but what is it? Not in my backyard. Was that NIMBY? Is
Yeah.
that the acronym for that? Okay. I heard that and I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like
I
thinking
like the
for a
new
while.
one though, the Yimbys now. Yes, in my backyard. That's the
Yes, in my backyard.
those
Okay.
are the cool group now. So, but okay, yeah, let's go ahead and play Younger's dissent or his comments. He was the only one to vote against against these changes, and he made a lot of interesting points that we can kind of talk about after the clip if you want.
Absolutely. All right, jump in there.
Mr. Jackson's presentation for the second time after the study session with all these questions, and having a week to think between that has really helped me with my thinking. There are some really good things in here. There are some things that I think are going to have negative effects that we're going to find out. And I'm struggling on which way I'm voting on this because of those perceived negative effects. Now I'm going to just kind of share what's going on in my brain. First of all, when this was first presented, I was confusing with the missing middle class with missing middle housing. And let me explain that. I firmly believe in America, the greatest way to reach the middle class is by owning your home. That historically has been the situation. I know things are changing with millennials, but then when they hit around 30, in general, they start thinking about putting down roots and buying a home. And historically, price appreciation on their homes, it's your greatest individual investment for most people. So I was confusing this with getting to people so they can buy their own house, so they can stop the rent cycle. You see where I'm getting at? That to me is is super important, but it's also important to increase housing stock. So I get that. And theoretically, this would increase housing stock, but I'm not so sure in the right spaces. And I'll explain that in a second. Now, let me talk about the path to home ownership, if you will. If our goal, if anyone else thought this is our goal, I don't believe this hits the mark for that. And the reason is, in my opinion, we have effectively changed the zoning for certain parcels that may make it more advantageous for investors to buy those properties up. If you look at Mr. Jackson's slide, if you looked at the colored areas where he says these duplexes and townhomes are going to most likely take place, I would venture that 70% of that is in District 7. Mr. Jackson, that's a back of the envelope thing. You can correct me if you're wrong at any time, but about 70% of the available land to develop is in District 7. And for most people, if you don't recall that slide, that's on the very western portion up against our watershed in the city of Bremerton. Okay, that's my district, District 7. My preference, and really backtracking, I think the horse left the barn a couple of years ago. I think it was a couple of years ago when the council allowed for 2 ADUs and a primary dwelling. And Mr. Jackson rightly pointed out that in the inner city area, not District 7, but the central core, downtown, and all those areas, Districts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the development is more advantageous for investors and or homeowners to go the ADU route because you can get bigger density. So this proposed ordinance is not going to increase, in my opinion, duplexes, triplexes, and townhomes in that area. Now, if you say, oh, well, Mr. Younger, how do you know that? Well, I asked last week and the administration provided. In 2018, the council allowed for duplexes and townhomes to be placed in any area within 500 feet of a commercial district. Mr. Jackson threw that slide up, and you could see there's quite a few areas that are represented throughout the city that meet that criteria. Well, since 2018, we've had a grand total of 1 duplex being built. 1. Okay? That is a fact. I'm not putting a slant on it. It is what it is. So my preference would be if there was a ownership requirement, a deed restriction. Now, if people say, well, then my property is not going to be that as valuable because I may have to move out of town, well, then maybe you're going to have to sell it. I think it helps cement the contract by allowing these different type of housing types in single family neighborhoods, with people in single family neighborhoods knowing, hey, yeah, I got a duplex next to me, but one of them is the owner. And they're going to monitor that renter. And we're going to help build community. Same with the clusters. I think I would prefer to have homeowners in those clusters. Okay. This does not do that. So then next I turn, okay, so that's my deal on middle class housing. And maybe that's not the intent of this ordinance. Next, I turn into what is middle housing. So during the discussion, I quickly Google it, and you can all do that while I'm talking if you like. Just picked up a random site. This one's called the Congress for the New Urbanism. So I don't think this is a right-wing thing, but I didn't do any investigation. The definition, I think we didn't talk too much or enough about what is middle housing. So bear with me, I'm just going to read it line for line. Missing middle housing is a range of multi-unit or clustered housing types compatible in scale with single-family homes that help meet the growing demand for walkable urban living. These types provide diverse housing options along the spectrum of affordability, including duplexes, fourplexes, bungalow courts, to support walkable communities locally serving retail, and public transportation options. This is why, and this is what's the tipping point, I think, as I talk out loud for me on this ordinance. We had many people from the public that are clamoring for more bus transportation. We have an ordinance before us that is going to take the duplexes and the townhouses, and they're going to put them way out in the outer skirts of District 7. District 7 out there is not a walkable community. There's not retail, and I don't see any retail coming soon. There's some car dealerships out there. There's a Red Apple Diner around Kitsap Lake, but Mr. Jackson, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I thought the goal for the city of Bremerton is to develop in commercial centers like the Charleston district, the Manette district, downtown, and then eventually Eastside Village. But instead, we want to spread the housing throughout the city. And all these people are calling in tonight and asking for better bus service. Well, if I'm Kitsap Transit, I'm going to say, I want to have the numbers to support that bus service, okay? We've got 2 members on the board. I'm sure they're saying we want more bus service. I don't doubt that. But Kitsap Transit represents all of Kitsap County, and they have to be objective, and they got to look at the numbers. Well, if this takes into hold and is actually successful, we're going to increase our growth out to District 7, and that's going to hurt possibly the desired growth in our inner core. I could be wrong, but I think that's what's going to happen. I think the intent's in the right place, but yeah, unless someone else wants to speak up, I'll reserve until I actually vote.
All right. So, that was really good there. I appreciated his perspective on that. Only one, right? And that's why we have to get into the details and get into the weeds, because it sounds good on its face, but then the end result isn't, what was intended, right? And we see that all the time.
Yeah. Now so my frame of thought going into this, really thinking about zoning and everything, was that, well, just allow density anywhere. And he made me step back from that thought a little bit. And that basically what he's saying is that by increasing density everywhere, what you're doing is you're going to encourage sprawl. You're going to, rural sprawl of just moving farther and farther out, as opposed to saying, let's focus our really highest density downtown. Let's build the towers and, whatever. So that's an interesting point. I mean, especially if you're trying to get away from cars and you don't have the public transportation. So if you're building all these huge complexes all around the county, then yeah, are you really causing more of a problem with that, environmentally, transportation wise, all of that. So that's an interesting, and I'm kind of leaning to, yeah, we should focus on like he said, the original goal was to focus on really building up density downtown, and then, going from there. The other interesting thing he brought up in there that kind of slipped by a little bit is this notion of really pushing for ownership, of property. I don't know how much I agree with that's the key to happiness, but but I think what he was saying was, so we need to be able to have different people be able to buy in at different levels. And one of the things he talked about was having a requirement that owners have to occupy the property they own. That would be a game changer. That would take all the finance industry kind of out of it, because you're forced to, and you wouldn't be able to sell your property for as much. So that's an interesting approach to it that I hadn't really considered, because like I said, one of the things driving this incredible rise in prices is really the finance industry of people just buying up property, one share at a time, all across the country. And so you're seeing them come into areas like Bremerton, just buy up whole chunks of property and just convert it to rental. And you're just taking money out of your community. So anyways, really interesting stuff from this council member Younger.
You know what I'll add into that, and I wouldn't necessarily say that, home ownership is the key to happiness. I think it could be one of the key. I think there's many keys, but there's a security in that, right? Like, this is mine. Someone isn't going to come and say, "Hey, I'm selling it. You have to move." Someone's not coming in and saying, "Hey, I'm raising your rent, so now you can't afford to live in here," right? And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
you have to pay your property tax, but that is huge to feel like this is mine, right? And if housing prices are going to continue to increase, then I can take a HELOC, which is a home equity loan, against my home if I have an emergency, or I'm putting the kids through college, or I need to do repairs, or things of that nature. And so I definitely resonate with what he was saying there, right? That is the middle class is being eroded because home ownership is unaffordable, right? And I love that idea of creating that passive income of, hey, I live on the left side of the duplex. I got a renter on the other side, helps to pay my mortgage, and it's all good. And if you move, you might have to sell it. This is for the residents of Kitsap County. This is for the residents of Bremerton. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
All right.
Okay, and then so Jennifer Chamberlin was chairing the city council meeting. First time she's chaired, and I think she did an amazing job of presiding over it. I'm always amazed at people who do that really well. Anyways, but so as the presiding person at the over the committee or the council, she gets the last word. So we'll go ahead and give her the last word here too.
Yeah, and before I play that, one other thing that I wanted to say was this is why civil discourse is important, right? We're at a spot in this country where we can't have a conversation if there's someone that doesn't agree with us. And if you don't fully agree, then you're an op. You're my opponent. But there, Eric Younger, Councilman Younger is speaking, and it's like, oh, Jeff had to take a step back, and really look at it and analyze it. And so both of these things are paramount for better government and a better community. Is we have to listen to all voices and listen, not here to respond, right? And really think about what's being said and taking a look at that and saying, okay, the intent of this was good, and he wasn't challenging the intent of goodwill, but this is the consequences that we've seen from it. So what can we do? And he brought solutions. I love solution-oriented people, right? It wasn't just, I'm against this. This doesn't work because XYZ. He said, yeah, I don't agree with this because XYZ. Here's the evidence of that. And here's some ways that we can do it differently where it would be more impactful for more of our community citizens. So I really love that.
Yeah.
All right, let's play Councilwoman Chamberlin.
Personally see a giant boom in these types of developments. What this issue really reminds me of, and I'm not sure who's seen it, but the KUOW article about war boxes. I don't know if anybody saw that or not. But this sort of reminds me of that we're creating. We have a huge.
I just wanted to pause there. I don't think she defined what are war boxes. Do you know what those are?
I'm not sure, but I think she may be referring to like during the World War I and II, when most of the housing in this city was built. They just I'm my interpretation of this is you just build as much housing as possible to get people in housing because of the war. I guess we've done that. Well, we've done that in the past to support war efforts, and I think what she's saying is take that frame of mind and do it for housing.
Gotcha. And I was listening to it, like war boxes. Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
need for housing. And so we're in a sense in a war, right? We have tons of homeless. We have an epidemic out there of homelessness, substance use disorder, mental wellness issues, all kinds of things that are going on. And we need war boxes in our communities. And I can definitely respect what Councilmember Younger is talking about the missing middle class. I'm an older millennial, proud, born in 1979, and I've never been in a situation, in a position to be able to own my own home. And I even tried recently, and this market was crazy. And so there weren't a lot of options for me. And I did want to ask quickly, there was a comment from the public about rent stabilization, which I think, and Ms. Fennell, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's actually legislature that kind of like I think it's frowned upon in our state. We don't have rent control in Washington state. Am I wrong?
We don't. It's preempted.
Okay. So we can't do rent stabilization, rent control. There's no options for that. And so then we have several council members that believe that if we have more housing, that we will in fact have lower rents, that more housing that we're not, but I don't personally believe that. I would love if one of you council members who believes that more housing equals lower rents, can you send me a study where that's actually worked in the community? Because I've been out there looking for these studies and I haven't found one. I do believe that more housing is better, that it provides more opportunities for folks to get a home. But what I just don't believe that it'll lower rents. Rents are going to keep going up. But that's neither here nor there. We need housing. I want to address really briefly, as briefly as I can, the issues regarding homelessness and tie that into a conversation real quick, not even a conversation, just a statement about the religious exemption, which is state mandated. We can't get around that. But what I really appreciate that the city has done, that the administration has done, is to put some boundaries on how the religious organizations can apply for this bonus density. So I appreciate that the city had the forethought to put some restrictions, boundaries in place in order to try to mitigate that. I am hopeful, even though I'm not part of a faith-based community, I am hopeful that religious organizations and BHA will take advantage of these programs in order to increase housing for folks that are in need. That's why I'm a huge supporter of this. And that's all I really have to say about that. I tried to make it brief. I get to be chair today, so I guess that means I get last word. I did want to ask really quickly, Mr. Jackson, a statement you made early on in your presentation. It says, you said, in part, BHA supports these amendments. Was it amendments or the criteria? And I wanted to know what you meant by in part, and if the BHA has any reservations about the code as presented.
No, it was the bonus density was extended specifically to BHA, and that's what we engaged with them on primarily, and that's what their letter was in support on. So that's why I said in part, because it was specific to the bonus density, because they're included in it.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. And so the BHA has a stellar record. They're really great at not only getting the data, but getting the grants and facilitating that. And I think we do need more affordable housing for folks to be able to use vouchers on. And I want to echo the community members' concerns that this is going to be like a luxury. You know, I am concerned about that, but I don't see this zone change being a huge boom in housing. And I do hope that it provides more options for folks of all different economic levels. Okay, so seeing no further discussion, I call for the question. And Ms. Hoover, you are back. So I'm sure Ms. Smith is very happy to turn it back over to you. Not that she's wasn't very capable and happy to take over.
No problem. Thank you for your patience. Do you hear me okay? Perfect.
All right, so a few things there. I definitely had some concerns. One, when she said, I don't see this as being a great boon for housing, that's a concern because we need to address it. We need a great boon, right? First and foremost, that is what we need. And then the other thing that was concerning to me was, she says, I have some concerns, but I don't think this is going to be luxury housing. And it's not about luxury housing, it's about unaffordable housing, right? So whether, the structure is $400,000, $500,000 or $2,000 a month, it's the same result. It's unaffordable. So yeah, it doesn't have to be luxury housing. That's a problem. So, two things. Yes, we need a boon of new housing, and we need a lot of it. But it also needs to be affordable. And I would like to see, I get that these things are set for religious organizations. The thing is that only certain religious organizations get to participate because we know that there's some inequities there. So if you look at, for instance, the Black community and their religious institutions, they don't have property ownership, at the same rate or even close as some of the other um, white institutions. So when you start thinking about that, again, racial equity. So how do you make that a possibility? I love the fact that they added in BHA, but are there some other local entities that you can incentivize in that way? So we're not getting, these private equity firms and whatnot coming into different towns and buying up all the property, right? So again, these half measures is what I see, and then we're still dealing with the crisis at hand. I digress.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, it's interesting to me that if you go back and look at some of the tapes from the beginning of this year talking about housing, um, they were all pretty much the council was all you heard was all we can do is create more housing and the market will take care of it. More housing equals lower costs. More housing, like, over and over again. But there's been a lot of pushback on that, and the science doesn't support it. So that's kind of fallen down now, which is good. So now we can get back to it. And I think that we are hitting on a really possible good solution here with from my viewpoint. But again, I'm still learning too on all this. So the big thing about that exemption was that it gave religious organizations and the Bremerton Housing Authority the ability to exceed density limits. And there was a reason for that at the state level, but that's essentially it, which is great. I think, and the Bremerton Housing Authority if we can get them some money to work with, some capital to work with, they can create some housing. I'm convinced. The more I've learned about all this, I think that she's right, that I think BHA could be a key to getting us some housing fast. Because if there was that big study that Kitsap and Bremerton did showing where the housing shortages, and one of the things they kept showing was that we've got a shortage of high income, high rent, whatever, high rent properties, the higher end. We've got a shortage of those. They said we've got a need for that, and those people are taking up the middle housing because there isn't the expensive stuff that they would prefer, which I don't know, but if I buy that argument. But at the other end, there's the low income group where there is no housing going. There's a huge shortage of low income housing, which we all know, and the market's not going to take care of that. So you're pretty much, in my mind, you're left with, you got to put some money into the problem and buy some property and start building property. That leads into our next discussion on the upcoming budget. I firmly believe there's plenty of money in there at budget to do this, to just turn it over to the Bremerton Housing Authority, and this is without having talked to the Bremerton Housing Authority. So, but it seems to me if we get them $5 million in capital, I bet they could solve our low-income housing needs pretty quick.
So let me ask you a question. Do you know, because this seems like a misnomer to me, where this conversation or talking point centered around, hey, the more you build, the cheaper property will become, because rental rates just continue to increase. It's not like, hey, we see there's a lot of construction going on now, right? My rent went up; it didn't go down. So where did this come from? Do you know?
It's just you know, being somewhat anti-capitalist myself, it's the capitalist rhetoric, right? It's I don't know. It's housing is really complex, and I think that that, there have been changes since like the Clinton administration that allowed housing and land to be financialized and put on the market, and that completely changed the game, in my opinion. You weren't talking about people's homes, you're talking about investments, and people are just anyways. So that's so it's easier to say, oh well, if we just build more, people like it, it fits with what people kind of feel like is true. Like if you build more, eventually prices will come down.
I
But
don't understand that.
yeah, if you're in the business, you know how to increase and keep your prices going up. I think
Mm.
you hire economists to say, oh no, we can do both. We can sell lots more and raise prices. But anyways,
All right, so our
getting way
next
out of my field. But
our next video is Joe Walter.
yeah, I'm kind of feeding into this whole. Then this goes into the next subject area, which is housing and the upcoming budget. And do we still have time? I don't know. We are running.
Yeah, we're good. We
Okay,
only
good.
have 2 videos left.
Okay. Okay, good.
Good now?
Yes.
Great. Joe Walter from G2 Bremerton Housing Division, formerly Bremerton Housing Equity Advocates. We're doing something that lots of us talk about, joining forces, working together, so we've unified. And I just want to amplify what a couple of folks have said about public transit. I have lots of friends who are not driving cars by choice, and others who are looking at Bremerton about, do I want to be here, without a car? So maybe that's a thing for the sustainability committee to look at. I just want to support that idea of take it really seriously. I'm thinking about zoning too, that when you build a new residence, that there are parking requirements for that. Maybe we can lighten up on those a bit. The primary reason I came was to talk about the upcoming October 26th meeting, which some of you have already said you're going to attend, and others will be shortly receiving an invitation to. And it is around Jane's issue about what's happening on the MLK block. And I'll just read a flyer to you, which you'll be receiving soon. The title of the event is "What Would MLK Do?" Join us for a solution-focused community dialogue about basic health and safety needs of our unhoused neighbors on Dr. Martin Luther King Way. Wednesday, October the 26th from 10 a.m. until 2. Our focus is on the most basic health and safety issues, toilets and trash. Let's use our collective power to resolve problems that have felt insurmountable. Together, we can find solutions that support the dignity of the homeless folks on the block and the quality of life for everyone in the neighborhood. Bring your ideas, your enthusiasm, your research, your wisdom, and your compassionate heart. This is a hybrid meeting. In-person attendance is preferred, and others can attend via Zoom. It is a long meeting because my fervent hope is that we can come out of this meeting with all of our questions answered and some clear solutions to present to those who can make our ideas for solutions happen. And I think it's going to be coming back to you, with people helping to answer this question that we've all felt embarrassed and uncomfortable about not being able to fix for so long. Okay, thank you.
All right. Your thoughts there. I don't know if that's the
Yes.
first time you heard that, but
Yeah, that's no, that's and I like that because it segues into solutions. How can we get some things more forward? How do we find some solutions? And to me, that segues right into the budget discussions that are happening right now because the city could be funding a lot more of these efforts solutions that we're coming up with. now I want to go ahead and the next, and I don't know if you want to add any of that before I go
Oh
to
no,
the
go ahead.
and then Jennifer Chamberlain kind of brings up the other side of the coin, sort of speak. I'll explain what I mean by that after.
All right, let me go ahead and cue her on up here. All right.
So up next is my report, but I'm going to go ahead and defer a 2.5-minute reply to Mayor Wheeler.
Thank you, everybody. And I
Uh-oh.
appreciate comments about the ferries. And I just wanted to let you know that this actually originated from me. This whole thing, all the way to working with Kitsap Transit, identifying their capacity, to just going out individually, supporting those relationships to create a region-wide push. And so the legislators just signed on to my letter, and so we're going to go to the governor all together. And I know I can't. We can't correct all the bitter feelings, and we shouldn't try, because everybody should feel like they can voice their bitterness. And there's been a lot of suffering. All I can do, as your mayor, is just build this coalition and go see if we can do something and bring some good back home to Bremerton. And so that's it. It's going to take a lot of us working together to do that.
All right, so I'll pause that there. Jeff is saying that's the wrong clip, but I think those words from the mayor are important, and because he's talking about his intent, right? And so if we are taking him at his word, then we want to see that collaborative spirit and being solution oriented and coming together, and going beyond what I would say are the selective circles of collaboration that currently exist, right? He sits on the board for the Salvation Army, meets with several organizations, but there are other people that want to be a part of the solution. And I don't know if this is happening or not. And I will talk with the Lived Experience Coalition, which is what the unhoused on MLK have organized under, if the mayor has come out and had conversations with them, if city council has come out and had conversations with them. This impacts them. What do they think? What do they need, right? How do they, what's their input on how this problem can be solved?
Yeah, and that was a little divergent clip, not the one I was trying to give you, but he was really talking about the ferry. So he launched a big effort to get more ferry service. Where's our ferry service? And that's been his big push. So that's what he was specifically talking about, was gathering together to get more ferry service, which to me seemed out of touch, because everybody else is talking about, what about our transportation here in Kitsap? And he's like, I'm out here fighting for the ferries with you. And it's like, hello. But anyway, so that's I'm sorry, that got a little sidetracked, but I don't know if you could, the shorter clip from Jennifer.
Oh, I'm ready to go. But I think that's important, right?
Yeah.
So if you're saying that you this collaborative spirit, there's a term that folks use today. It's like, keep that same energy, right? So, don't be this way or a certain way with Jeff, and then when you come and you deal with Marwan, you're a different way, right? Keep that same energy you had when you're dealing with Jeff. And so if you got all this collaborative energy for the transit, for the ferry system, then you need to have that same energy of collaboration and finding solutions and being an advocate for the unhoused. Keep that same energy. Hashtag.
I like it.
All right, here we go.
And I think Bremerton does feel like we get the short end of the stick. We have a lot of people, but I guess we have we generate lower income for the state. Is that right? We seem to be a magnet for folks that need resources, which is actually a kind way to be. It's a kind way to be as a city, to be a magnet to assist people that need resources. And so it's a shame that we as a city are being treated in a way that's second class, third class, fourth class, whatever you want to call it. I actually took First up.
So,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
so there's this prevailing this narrative, this feeling, I don't know what to call it, in Bremerton, that Bremerton is the dumping ground for poor people for every other area. That everybody's just pushes their. Yeah, I've heard people, oh, they're dropping them off in Bremerton or whatever. Um, but if you look at the census, it's most of half of our population is poverty level. I think that's, or close to poverty level.
Is it half?
It's pretty. It's more
Wow.
than like Kitsap County. I'm not. I don't quote numbers good in my head. So if I don't show you the picture of it, then question my numbers. But yeah, so it's significantly lower income than the rest of Kitsap County. We do have a lot more service providers here, but my thing is that we're saying we've on the one hand. Oh, can you bring up that first slide?
Yes. Pull that up here for you. Boom.
Yeah, so this is showing the total budgets for Kitsap County, Bremerton, and then Poulsbo, and I can't read my writing there.
Port Orchard.
Poulsbo and Port Orchard. I was going to put Bainbridge, but man, I could not figure out their financial statements at all. I could not figure out how much their budget was in Bainbridge. So, but
Wow.
anyways, but the point is that Bremerton's got a lot of money. We've got half the budget that the whole county has, much more than Port Orchard or Poulsbo. $220 million budget a year. That's quite a bit of money. So to say that you're being burdened by all these poor people and services and need of services. Well, you're not. I don't see anywhere where you're spending any of your 224 million to do anything. So that's what I'm kind of looking at in the budget is great for letting people hang out on your little strips of free public land as long as they don't set up tents, but we need to do more, a lot more for people who are falling through the cracks here. And I don't know why we're not. And just if you, and so, and I think there's money there. So if you go to the next slide,
Second there. All right. Here we go.
So, and this is going back to what we talked about. So on the right is the chart I showed last year or last week of how, most of the COVID money is sitting in a bank account. But on the left side, which I didn't share last week, was how it was allocated. So this is how the money is allocated to be spent. If they do spend it, I'm still looking into what happens if they don't spend it, and also whether they can reallocate these funds to something else. Because from my reading, it is clear that this money could have been used. I'm pretty sure this money could have been given to the Bremerton Housing Authority to back up all their grants as capital to build housing. I think using this as capital to build low-income housing was completely allowed. And so why did we decide, stormwater is our top priority? You've got 73% going to stormwater. You've got the kind of, 6% for small business, 6% for renters, 6% for the conference center, 6% for the police and courts. I would have loved to have heard this conversation, and it would have been great if it was transparent and open. We've got $8 million. What's the best way for our city to spend it? And I'm just sitting, I can't imagine the conversations back there. Well, I don't know. Why don't we throw it into stormwater? Really? And then the problem with this is that according to the latest forms, they haven't even spent the small business funds for none of that small business fund has gone to small businesses according to their filing.
Really?
None of the renter money has gone to renters according to their latest filing. Conference center got their money, police and courts got their money, some of it. The city got some new HR software. But so, I mean, I would just love to, and I'm saying this could go to BHA because I think from what, I agree with what Council Member Chamberlain was saying, that they have the expertise, they know how to build housing. They have the expert, they know how to do it, and they can leverage if they had a significant chunk of capital, like $5 million, they can then leverage that to then build low-income housing so that everybody. I I would just love to hear actually Bremerton Housing Authorities show how much they could do with that much money, and so to me that's the quickest way to get some housing is to buy it and build it, buy the land and build it, and
So when I look at this, Jeff, I a couple questions come to my mind. For those that are watching out there, I'll give you your math lesson for today, right? That 8,890,000, it's a little less than 10,000 off of 9 million. So let's call it 9 million, right? 73% went to infrastructure stormwater. So if you take that 9 million and multiply it by 0.73, right? You're moving the decimal 2 spots to the left, then you get about $6.3 million went to infrastructure stormwater. So you could do that for all those numbers. So the question that comes to me was, what was so dire about our stormwater? Like, were we critical? Is our stuff so antiquated and breaking down? Like, it's like we've got to do something right now, or do we have a situation like what was that, Mississippi? Is that where they're having their water issues? Is that what we were trying to stave off here? So I definitely have some questions as to why such a large expenditure needed to go here. But my thought is I would hope there is a really good reason for that, because that is a huge. I mean, that's 3/4 of the budget there.
Yep, and I'm hoping that one of our local press will do a really good story on this because there's a lot of questions here, and hopefully, I don't know, one of them will run an article on it. Okay, so the next slide. What is my next slide?
It is right there.
Okay, so I pulled the budgets for the last 5 years, and just to show you some comparisons of what we've been spending our money on. Down there at the bottom is the money that's allocated specifically for affordable housing. I think that's a grant that actually does go to the Bremerton Housing Authority, but I'm not positive. There was zero in 2018, but since 2019, they've thrown $104,000 into affordable housing, compared to $1 million a year for our conference center. And of course, that's just dwarfed by the amount of money we're spending on fire and rescue and law enforcement and courts. And if you look at the law enforcement and courts, it's skyrocketing. Forget defunding, we're double funding police. And it goes back to that whole, we have to stop depending on our police for everything. We need to start picking up for the housing, get some people some housing, get some people some mental health treatment. Let's with all that money, we could probably build a really good emergency care spot downtown, which would serve the whole community. And maybe have, some crisis counseling, something. And I think there's funding out there, but we just need to put a little bit in the pot. We just need our city council and our mayor to cough up some money. And then I think there's tons of matching funds. And you would have to talk to other experts about that. But the feeling I get is that there's a lot of matching funds out there if the localities are willing to do something. But what we're seeing now is just, as things get rougher, and things are going to get rougher, as they raise these interest rates and they start pushing people out of jobs to keep the inflation rates down, things, we're going back to a pretty dog eat dog world of capitalism where people are being pushed out. More and more people are being pushed out on the streets. And, so how is Bremerton dealing with it, specifically on ML King? For the people who are at the lowest and have just dropped, like they're in their car, maybe holding on if they're the lucky ones on ML King. And what's our response? Our response is to go the same law enforcement route. ticket the poor, ticket the poor, ticket the poor until they have so many tickets that they end up in jail. This is a direct plan to shoot people to jail, as opposed to embracing care, which we know that's got to be a better approach. And so I don't know why in such a liberal city such as Bremerton, we've got such a, well, although it maybe goes along with the authoritarian government structure we have, and now I'm going way on a tangent, but authoritarian governments go with more police always. And so, so I would just hope, and the budget is being decided behind closed doors. They're going to release it, give people 2 weeks to comment, and then it's supposed to be done with it. Honestly, we need to shut this thing down. We need to stop this from happening this year and make sure that some money is put in there for the care of people. Hopefully when the mayor releases his budget, he'll be like, "You were way ahead of me, Jeff. It's all in there, man. I hope you spoiled my surprise." I'm hoping, always hopeful, but
Christmas
this
in
scares me.
September.
This chart scares me for our community.
Well, so when you're looking at this, if you were to make some assumptions here, what would be your hypothesis on why what is that? Law enforcement and courts increased from about 14.5 million to 17 million. Is that post-COVID? Is that going from Zoom to back in person?
I would have to dig into it, but
Because that is a massive jump, right?
it is a massive jump.
And then my other thing is why is the conference center costing $1.4 million per year to operate?
And for
Although
who?
costs did go down, they've been decreasing since
Yeah.
2000, but that could be because of COVID, right? They weren't meeting in person, so maybe labor is decreased.
Right. Well, and it might be interesting to see because I think all the COVID funds that flowed to them went to salaries. So I think, I don't know. I think there may be some pretty. I would like to check out the salaries that are being paid at the conference center, but as my next step. But I don't know why we're supporting a conference center. We're all free market. Well, if the market wants to have a conference center, it'll create it. In my mind, it's just So why? I don't know. I don't know why we're supporting. And they'll say it brings in business. I would love to see those numbers. Hopefully, when we get that auditor can show us that.
Well, and that's why auditing is important, right? So who is actually using this conference center? So
Right.
is it builders? Because I know they've met down there at the conference center, right? So they're coming in from out of town to have conversations about building here in the county. Like who's using this? And then when you look at it and you say, hey, this is a 1.5 million. Well, over the course of 10 years, we're looking at what, $15 million? And how much housing could you build with $15 million over the course of 10 years? If, like you said, there was no conference center and you figured out, hey, you know what? There's the Marvin Williams Center that's right downtown. Why not make that the conference center and pour money into local business, right? Instead of pouring it into an entity like that. And the Marvin Williams Center is an event center, right? And there are a few of those that are throughout. So wouldn't that be a way to say, hey, you know what? We can actually address some of the issues for our residents that actually live here.
Right. And I didn't throw in your favorite, the golf courses. I should have. Yep. So this is my thing. Call the city council, call the mayor, call them now, call them often. Fund services, not police. Well, okay. Or you can just say fund services if you don't want to be adversarial against the police, I guess. But I think that's really what needs to happen in Bremerton. That's my final argument.
And I'm of a split mind on that. I think definitely police are needed. There's some very scary things that I don't know how accurate it is in regards to some of the things that they're doing policy wise in Chicago. It's like a free for all. It's some terrifying things. So we do need we need law enforcement to go back to protecting and serving, right? The service part seems to be missing a lot. And so when, police departments would have campaigns to go into the schools and in the inner city and,
try to make their police departments look like the people that they're serving, not policing, right? we forget that piece of it. Then things can change, right? We do need, that is a service that we need, but we need to fund everything. Um, and right now, it does look like it is very much skewed when you're looking at those numbers, right? And I can also respect the fact that, hey, look, the world went crazy from COVID to post COVID. We weren't seeing people losing their minds on airplanes, right? I mean, that's insane. I can't imagine losing my ass on a plane, being barred from, I mean, we're seeing just the most radical things. And so, yes, that is going to increase the need for law enforcement based on the fact that people have lost their humanity in a lot of different ways. But then you got to look at what's the reason for that. And a lot of that is mental health and support and not being able to afford to live in their own country. So, you have to address the root issue, right?
Yeah. So bottom line, we can afford to give some capital to the Bremerton Housing Authority to build some housing. We can afford to set up an urban rest stop downtown and give people access to toilets and trash. We can absolutely afford that. We can absolutely afford to have, some dedicated street outreach caseworkers for our really most severely um, in need people downtown. All of that we can absolutely afford. And I think it's just getting our government to pay for it. And then I keep coming back. We have a $50 million surplus. So can't we peel off 5 million to help some people? I mean, let's try it, right? And I'm the same way. I'm like, let's try something and see if it works and measure it, and then try something new if that doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely with you there. Look at this last slide here. Oh, as always, Jeff puts up the next meetings that we just had city council a few days ago. So next week will be a study session. Although I will be covering the CK School District board meeting, so that will be happening Wednesday. So you'll see that. Also, keep in mind that we cover the Olympic College board meetings. I don't know how that's going to change since they were talking about going back in person. There were some folks that provided open comment there, and they said they wanted to keep it going, and that was important. So we'll keep you updated as to how that goes. And we'll keep covering React, which is important. Anything you want to say in the upcoming meetings there?
Nope. I think there's another board of trustees meeting, special meeting of the board of trustees for Olympic College on Tuesday.
Oh, really?
But anyway, I'll get that information to you.
That would be awesome. Oh, whoops, not that one. I wanted to share with you guys the flyer that Joe was talking about
I
there.
love this. I love this. Way to go. Yeah.
What would ML King do? And I actually wanted to add the caveat is what would MLK do? And then are you doing it? Right? And asking the question. So, folks are so quick to quote ML King, especially, during the holiday and the birthday. And it's like, well, are you doing, what he would do? Join us for a solution-focused community dialogue about basic health and safety needs of our unhoused neighbors on Dr. ML King Jr. Way, hosted by the G2 Bremerton Housing Division. And the one piece that Joe left out is we will be feeding everyone. So, we want you to feel good. Things seem to go better when there's food. It's going to be Wednesday, October 26th at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The focus is on the most basic health and safety issues, toilets and trash. Let's use our collective power to resolve problems that have felt insurmountable. And understand it's not just toilets and trash. I mean, we're here to be solution oriented. So in our conversation, we might find out there's something else. I actually had a conversation with shout out to Councilwoman Chamberlin that laundry services are paramount, right? So that's another thing that needs to happen. Together, we can find solutions that support the dignity of the homeless folks on the block and the quality of life everyone in the neighborhood. Bring your ideas, your enthusiasm, your research, your wisdom, and your compassionate heart. This is a hybrid meeting. In-person attendance is preferred because we're going to feed you. And others can attend via Zoom. Please RSVP at g2housing22@gmail.com. So let me go ahead and put that email in the chat for you so you have it. Anything you want to say about this?
No, I'm looking forward to it. Sounds great.
And this Wednesday is our pancake breakfast every fourth Wednesday. And we're actually going to be spending some time on that day doing some planning for October's meeting, right? We want it to go as smoothly as possible. We're going to be feeding people then too. So come on down. And then at 2:00, usually we go from 11 to 2, so you can drop in whenever you can. Some folks, have to take a hard lunch break at 12 and they'll zip down and join in the meeting and then zip back out, which is totally okay. But we are going to be cooking a bunch of meals. And at 2 p.m., I'm going down with Sean and many other people. And shout out to Courtney. And we're going to have lunch, or I should call it brunch, with the Lived Experience Coalition, those folks on ML King. And I'm going to have my pancake breakfast down there with them and join their meeting. So all that's going to happen on Wednesday. So should be a lot of fun. And again, building community, building relationships. That's what has to happen. And we have to be the ones to do it. We cannot wait for other people to solve the problems for us. We have to solve the problems for ourselves, and then we have to push those that can actually make the change to make those changes, right? And so that's what this is.
Cool.
And there's one more thing that I wanted to show before we jump off here. And this was a particularly long show. We're over 2 hours here. But man, we had a lot going on today, right? Jeff's like,
I warned you.
he always is like, it's gonna be light. It's gonna be light. It's like, I don't think it is. Oh, I seem to have used up. You all have to share your screen for the first thing that you sent me. I used up my free article limit.
Oh yeah, I hate those. That's right. Let me.
Well, and while Jeff is pulling this up, so this is interesting. So I think I'm just not logged in. So I do subscribe to the Sun, and it's like $1 a month, and I'm like, how does that paper stay open?
Okay, let's see how I do this.
You have any ideas on that?
Uh,
Because I don't know too many people that have a subscription. I'm like, how are they functioning at $1 per month? I mean, even if every person in this county subscribed, that's only $300,000, right? Like, how's that happening?
let's see. So can you see that? Is that?
Yep.
Okay. So yes, I have Kitsap Sun. Encouraged housing in Bremerton.
Your mic is cutting out, Jeff.
Uh-oh.
Let me read it for you since your mic is cutting out. So Jeff made the Kitsap Sun here. Go ahead and scroll back up for me. Let me read that. All right. Just tell me the date. That looks like it's a little blurry.
Today.
This was today's paper? Turn your camera off, Jeff. That'll help.
Turn my camera off. Okay. How do I do that?
Oh, here, I'll do it for you. That might help. Not really. So what was the date on this article here?
Today. Let's see, September 25th. Yeah,
All
so
right,
today.
so while we're trying to figure it out, I can't share the article because I can only look at so much. But Jeff made the Kitsap Sun. The mayor and Bremerton City Council have the power and the available funds to start buying property and creating a permanent low-income housing we desperately need in Bremerton. All the money that is currently being collected in permits and fees should be earmarked for the Bremerton Housing Authority. This year, the city will bring in roughly $2 million in permits and fees. This is not a lot of money given the overall $250 million budget for the city and the fact that the city is looking at a $50 million surplus for the year. but the amount of money could be used to create a bunch of permanent low-income housing. The Bremerton Housing Authority has an expansion, the expertise to make that happen, and the city should trust their expertise. Using the taxes that are generated from the creation of high-end housing to support the creation of low-income housing makes sense. We have a moral obligation as a community to use our excess wealth to support our less affluent neighbors. Just sitting on the money is causing real harm in our community. So this is Jeff Campbell with his article here in the Kitsap Sun. Awesome. All right, why don't you stop sharing and then you'll come back in stronger. All right, we'll wait for Jeff to turn his camera back on. Back on and stop. All right, so we'll let him get that. So that's awesome. I love to see that Jeff has an opinion piece there in the Sun. That's fantastic. So what my question for Jeff is, how did you get your an article in the Sun? Like, what do you have to do to be published? Like, that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty awesome. Jeff, if you can hear me, refresh your computer, and that will bring you back. Run all this stuff takes a lot of computer processing power. So sometimes when you've got your camera and your mic going and you try to share a screen, then it gets really crazy. So much stronger. All right. Congratulations, Cheryl. How did you get your article, an article in the Kids episode?
And this is yeah, interesting. So anybody can submit a letter to the editor. It's all another great way of participating in the conversation. Yeah, so I just submitted it and wrote it, and they accepted it. So I would encourage people to use that avenue to express their opinions on things too.
So when was this published?
Just today.
It's in today's paper. So
yeah.
if you want a keepsake or memento,
That's
get
right.
today's paper.
And
Jeff's article in there.
There was one last paragraph that you skipped, and I will read that.
Yes.
Because it's my positive spin, the mayor and city council want to do the right thing. They just need to know we have their backs on this. Let them know that you support using a relatively small portion of our city budget to support our less affluent neighbors and create low-income housing that is needed right now in Bremerton.
You wrote that? That sounds like a ghostwriter.
That was my last one. I was like, yeah, a ghostwriter. I'm pretty good. I've got when I write, and my process for writing articles is to at least rewrite it 3 times, because I spit it out, and then about the 3rd time of me rereading it and rewriting it is when I get my sweet spot.
No. What I mean by being a ghostwriter, just that last paragraph, you were quite kind and gratuitous.
Yes, do something, assholes. No.
That is more like what I would see in the last paragraph. I was like, Jeff had a ghostwriter for the last paragraph. This is pretty kind.
So good.
That's funny. All right, man. I think this was a great episode. What do you think?
I do too. I love doing these. It helps me kind of put things in perspective myself, so it's fun.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it has been
I
wouldn't be
can't
mad
really
at
hear you.
that.
Oh, there you are.
No, you can't hear me?
There you are. Okay.
Am I too loud there? Wouldn't be bad if you came downtown if you wanted to help out, but we'll be down there. So I'm gonna be going and picking up the food and making some more food and getting all this deliciousness ready for the folks. So any final words?
Nope. I think I've worn myself out.
All right. Well, for Jeff Campbell, I am Marwan Cameron. This is the Civic Second. This is the Conduit Network. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next time.
Thanks.